If you're going with an agent that does digital marketing, you'll have the advantage of being one of the few properties that is digitally marketed in your area. At the moment, not many agents do it.
Hi guys, welcome to Property Chat with Lachy and Matt, powered by great friends at Realhub and Campaign Track. And today we've got a really special guest with us, Stefan Williams, co-founder of Campaign Track, which is, just to give you guys a little bit of background, a real estate marketing company for agents. So they basically help agents to do all of the marketing to get your home out there in the marketplace in the best possible way. Now, Stefan, what we wanted to talk about today was particularly digital marketing. Now, I know that a lot of sellers might listen to this and say, well, yeah, I marketed my property digitally, or my agent marketed my property digitally. I've got that base covered. But these days, it is so advanced and there's so many avenues that you can take in marketing your property digitally. So I guess from your perspective, what do you see as digital marketing in today's age?
That's an awesome question, and thanks for having me on your show, guys. I think maybe start with, in terms of how properties are discovered nowadays. Marketing is about making your property discovered by a potential buyer. There's more than one way to do that, and a really good marketing campaign won't just rely upon any one thing. Now, it's true nowadays that the majority of buyers are going to come from the online realm. If you still advertise in newspapers, obviously signboards still play an important role for drive-by interest and things like that. But, it's a digital world nowadays, and, the property portals are a way of reaching people digitally. But they reach a certain audience, and these are are best described as people who are in market. They're actively looking, they know exactly where they want to look, and they're typing in specific, even down to specific streets and looking at maps, etc. But we also know, if you look at marketing around the world from how it's done in other categories, Google and Facebook, they're the platforms really that power marketing across the planet. So digital marketing in real estate really is something that's started to become more and more common, and the better agents really are starting to get behind it. And really the idea of digital marketing is to use those platforms, to use social media, Facebook, Instagram, as well as channels like Google and Google Search, to cast the net wider, to reach people who mightn't be looking with those specific searches in those specific areas, to reach what are called passive buyers. And a passive buyer is somebody who buys a property when they're not in market. And I can speak from experience that most properties I've bought, I haven't actually been in market until I've seen it or somebody's told me about it. I mean, you guys must come across that every day.
Yeah, we do. It happens quite a lot. I'm not in a dissimilar situation myself. We bought our place through Facebook, as funny as that sounds. But I think it's 100% right that passive space for a lot of people, you get marketed things all the time that you don't even realise it's happening, whether it be, buying a suit that you've happened to see pop up on Facebook, all the way through to buying a house.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's some key benefits for a seller in dealing with a passive buyer, especially. I mean, in terms of, quite simply, the fact that, like you said, in regards to someone online, typing in the suburb, they're researching, they know every street, they know all the sales, there's so much information available to buyers at the moment, so much more than there used to be in the past. Those type of buyers, those active buyers, they're going to be incredibly savvy around price. Mm-hmm. Price is going to be really important to them.
Excellent point.
Whereas a passive buyer coming to a property, it's the property that's attracted them.
Yeah, they've fallen in love with it.
Yeah. So already that property is the thing that's attracted them to market.
Yes.
So there's not necessarily 10 other options for them.
Yep.
So it kind of,
they don't have the same awareness around the market, I've found, generally. Like whenever I've dealt with someone, most of my emotional buyers have been passive. It's been, you know what, geez, I remember selling an apartment, and he said, that's the apartment I've walked past for so long, and always thought if that ever came on the market, geez, I'd have a look at it. I happened to see the guy at the ice creamery, mentioned it to him, it was the apartment above the ice creamery. The guy heard about it on his way past and bought it.
Done.
And that's a great example of just passive marketing.
Yeah.
That's more the word of mouth, but the digital space, and I know you guys have quite a few different products that that sort of tailor and target that.
We do. Well, we call our solution AIM, which stands for Advanced Internet Marketing, and really it's a way of unlocking a whole toolkit of marketing options, like a multi-channel marketing campaign to a real estate agent, really, really simply. So it doesn't require the real estate agent to be a digital marketing expert. And let's face it, you're experts in negotiation, you're experts in marketing, but digital marketing is a whole thing that you could spend years skilling up on. So we kind of remove all of those pain points and make it a really simple exercise. And then, the idea is to use a number of different channels, not just Facebook, not just Google, to blend it together to give you, I guess, the largest reach. In other words, be seen by more people, some of which, by the way, will be active buyers, but maybe they haven't seen that particular listing on the property portal. Yeah. We definitely target active buyers as well, but we also cast that net wider to target passive buyers as well, too, who you're not going to discover searching the portals. And the other thing that we've found that's really popular nowadays is what's called out-of-area targeting. So if you're selling a property in an area where your agent knows, or you might even know, that sometimes, and sometimes often, people come from other parts. So for example, you sell...
Northern Beaches is us. Like we get a lot of
buyers. Yeah, you get a lot of people from the Northern Beaches
yeah.
because they can have the lifestyle that they want, but they can probably buy a better house with the same money up north. And now, thanks to COVID, their bosses said it's okay to work from home.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it be great to say, hey, listen, I would like to show my listing to people in other parts of Australia or other parts of the city or even internationally, because there could well be interest from expats, or that there's buyers that often come from the Northern Beaches. So if you just rely upon the property portals, you are online, that is a form of digital marketing, but in my mind, a blended campaign that combines a property portal listing with some social media marketing, with some Google marketing, some search engine marketing as well, and also social media posts, which are different from ads. You do all of those things, and it's not expensive to do it, but I wouldn't be recommending you just spend $50 on Facebook and say you've done digital marketing. That would be like putting a postcard up instead of a signboard on your fence. You $50 only goes so far. Yeah. What we find is that the bigger campaigns just get that much more exposure, and more exposure, more people click, and of that, more people click, more people make inquiries. And if you're a vendor, think about this. If you just have one more person interested in your property, it's going to mean a better price if that person's battling another person. So creating
that competitive tension.
Yeah.
Well, I think the key thing is that from a seller's perspective, a lot of sellers probably think that their agents are doing this for them, and a lot of agents think that they're doing this as well. But the reality is, like you just alluded to, they're really just putting a post on Facebook. They've probably only got 100 or 200 followers on their account. And then there's the matter of the algorithms that are meaning that it's really not getting seen by those people anyway. So who's actually seeing that post? So as a vendor, so let's say I'm interviewing an agent and trying to figure out what their digital marketing strategy is. What should I be concerned about? What should I be finding out about what that agent does or what their strategy is around that?
Well, I mean, if I was a vendor, I'd be looking for an agent that has made the transition mentally to the way marketing works nowadays. Now, 5 years ago, the newspaper was a strong component of every marketing program. Some agents are backing out of that, and in some areas there isn't a newspaper. So if you want to look at, and newspapers, by the way, were very good at finding passive buyers because people would flick through these beautiful property catalogues each week, and every now and again somebody would jump into the market. If you're not doing that, or even if you are, you probably dial it back a bit. I would be looking for an agent that basically gives me a broader reaching campaign. And a Facebook post that's been promoted, $50 or whatever it is, that's paying lip service really. That's not a proper marketing campaign. Proper marketing campaign, digital marketing, Google, Facebook, it's pay to play, right? You don't get a lot of free placements nowadays because they're businesses. But what they sell is they sell access to an audience and some very sophisticated targeting. So, what we do is we then hook into Google and Facebook to make sure that the ads that we show are to people who are much more likely to be interested in the property.
Get served correctly.
They get served correctly, because you can also spend a lot of money showing ads to random people who aren't interested in property or are much less likely to be interested in property. So if you want to know what you're buying when you buy digital marketing, you're buying ad placement on Google and on Facebook and on Instagram and all that sort of stuff. But you're also buying targeting so that you effectively see that your ads are shown to more people who are more likely to be interested. Yeah. And the agents that do this on every listing, and I think it's inevitable, we're going to end up, is it a year, is it 3 years, I don't know, but there'll be a time when every agent is going to do a decent digital marketing campaign in addition to a property portal listing on every listing, just like they do a signboard on every listing. Yeah. But I can tell you right now today, 5% of agents are in that spot. Most agents don't even do it, or if they do it, it's I've done a post and I put $50 behind it, tick. Yeah. Digital marketing is not a ticker box exercise. It's a lethal weapon.
It'll become a standard as professional photos as that came in, or floor plans. Yep. And I know myself, whenever I'm making a campaign, some of the things I think about are reach and frequency. Yep. So how far is it going? How frequent? Because as we've talked about, an ad in the paper is good, but it only lasts a week. Yep. If you're doing something online, you do have that benefit of placing that ad for 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, as long as you campaign. And for an auction campaign, you need as much consistency around that as you can, so that come auction day, they're constantly thinking about it. And I know from an agent's point of view as well, I've often seen or spoken to a buyer who's been extremely active, and they've said, I've seen it on realestate.com, but then it followed me. I saw it on Facebook and then Instagram, and then saw it in the window, and it just felt like it had to be. And I guess it's all those sorts of points to try and help someone buy it. And the benefit of the digital marketing, as opposed to, some of the more traditional forms of advertising, is that this is measurable. So measurable. Yeah,
well, that was going to be my next point, and neatly said, because if you do a letterbox drop, and I'm not saying that isn't something that what doesn't work in some areas, a lot of agents swear by, but you can't measure that. You don't know how many people have just picked it up, chucked it in the bin. You don't know how many people have looked at it and read it. But digital marketing can tell you that, because if somebody clicks on an ad, if somebody, once they're there, spends a bit of time and flicks through the photos, if somebody's gone, I can see it's open next weekend, I'm going to add that to my calendar, so it is trackable. And I think, if I was a vendor and going, digital marketing, I don't know if it's worth investing in. Well, firstly, we know it is, because we've seen so much data to show it does shift the needle on interest in properties, and you've shift the needle on that, meaning more buyers means more competitive tension, vendors are going to end up with a better price. But the fact that you can see what your money's buying, so with our product in particular, you get a report that's a live reporting dashboard. You can go in any time you like and see how many people have seen your ad on Facebook and on Google, and how many have clicked, and even how old they are, what gender they are, and where they are in the world. Not down to individual houses, unfortunately.
No,
that's
not yet.
Not yet. That would be an invasion.
But if we've all got, I think everyone, I would say most people these days, not everyone, would have a smartphone. And some people might decide to use Samsung, that's on them. But I know with the iPhone, I can't speak for Samsung, but it will pop up and show you your screen time. And I would say to any vendor out there who sits there and says, well, I don't know whether digital marketing is going to be something I want to heavily invest in outside of your normal, real estate domain portals, have a look at your screen time. See where you're spending a lot of your time. I would say most of the people I know, because I will pitch this in the lounge room, I'll say, pass me your phone and I'll show you. And you'll see Facebook, Instagram, Google, all those sorts of things show up as their most frequently used.
It's like between 20 and 40 hours a week per person in Australia. It's crazy, right? So, I guess that's the point of digital marketing, is when people are actively looking, they're on the portals. You want your property on the portals, 100%. When they're not looking, even if they are in market, they're on social media. They're looking at the footy tipping website. They're on Gumtree looking for a new lawnmower or whatever. Show them ads when they're doing stuff in their normal life, because they actually spend so much more time doing that than they do even looking at portals, even when they're actively in market. It's crazy. So
you can switch real estate mode on like that, for a lot of people, I think especially in today's world, with just how quickly we have access to things. I remember speaking with Frank once and just saying, I bought a pair of shoes and it showed up same day, and the service the whole way through in terms of the follow-up was incredible. It's starting to fall that way with houses. People are expecting that same level of service, so you have to be able to keep up with that.
But the other thing is that people are viewing so many properties now, especially when they are searching online, and it's about making that memorable. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure we all know this experience. You go and look at one item on any online store. Next minute, you're seeing pairs of shoes for the next 4 weeks. Yep. Why are people not doing that with homes? Or as you say, why is only 5% of the agents really tapping into that? Yep. So how much, benefit do you see to a seller in having that emotional connection build with a buyer over, let's say, the 4 weeks of an auction campaign, because they keep seeing your property throughout their digital world for the next few weeks?
Well, I think you've neatly touched on, I guess, a layman's description of what's called remarketing, also known as retargeting. It's exactly that thing where you've gone to a website and maybe you didn't buy, but then you start to get chased around the internet by that same thing or other things from the same seller. So remarketing works in exactly the same way, and our solution taps into that, so that if somebody clicks on an ad, hey, I'm going to show it to you again a few more times so that you can see it. And it definitely does move the needle in terms of starting to bond with it. The other thing too is that a good digital marketing platform, and ours does this, will not just have one ad, it has multiple ads. So maybe I might show you the living room shot, and then a couple of days later, there's the view, or there's the pool, and you start to see a bit more of the property. And I do think it's important to remain top of mind. Yeah. And the other thing too is, when you look at the role of, say, social media posts versus ads, ads work better than posts in terms of targeted, getting to people. But posts are something that are on people's Facebook pages, and so it sort of forms part of a portfolio. But both of those things people can comment on, and they often do. So if somebody comments on or likes an ad, or they get tagged in on an ad or a post or whatever, one of the things we do is that we make sure that during the campaign we auto-comment on behalf of the agent, so it looks like the agent's doing it, about every open home and the fact that the auction's coming up, so that those people get a reminder. And the beautiful thing about that is that, once again, it's another way of reinforcing, bringing people back, because maybe one showing's not enough, and maybe they initially dismissed it, but then they went this weekend and they went and looked at a whole bunch of other properties, and they're looking at so many properties, you don't always remember their addresses, etc. And none of those ones did on the weekend, did it for you, and it's like, oh, I wish I could remember that name of that one that I clicked on last week, etc. There it is. So it's that.
You're that social proof aspect a lot of the time as well. And I think the big thing for me was always, I know marketing spend has been something a lot of vendors have really tightened up on lately, and I'm conscious of the fact it's a big outlay with no guarantee of a sale. Naturally we're in a good market at the moment, especially regionally. Properties are moving quite quickly, and your marketing spend, and there are a lot of vendors who fall into the trap of thinking, well, because they're moving quickly, I don't need to make that spend. And I disagree with that point heavily, but that's probably something we'll get into in a minute. But my point was more so, up until sort of late 90s, it was common that a vendor would spend up to 1% of the value of the property marketing it. That's no longer the case. I would say my average campaign and average price would be about $850, $900, and the average campaign would be $3,500. And you think, if you just spent that extra $1,500 or $2,000, how many more buyers would be introduced to the property? How many more people could we get through the home?
Well,
it would just be huge.
I mean, the amount of digital marketing you can buy for even $1,000 is extraordinary. I mean, you can do a half-decent digital marketing campaign for $500, and we've got campaigns that start at under $200. I would only do that if I really did have a budget challenge. And if I had a budget challenge, I would also make digital marketing one of the things that I didn't challenge. I would go, well, what else is on the list? Well, maybe we don't do the letterbox drop, or maybe we don't do this, or maybe we don't do that. But I certainly wouldn't be bulleting digital marketing, that's for sure. But think about this. If you get one other person interested in a property and you've got two people fighting, the needle doesn't move $1,500, does it? No. It moves.
You're an auctioneer. How many times have you won the marketing back per bid?
Exactly right. And that's what I was about to ask you. You touched on competitive tension a little bit earlier, and I think it's important for a seller to understand the difference that every tiny incremental increase in marketing can add to competitive tension, and what the sort of benefit that can be to them. And you're absolutely right. If we get one buyer extra on auction day, it can make a monumental difference. It makes a monumental difference if you've got 7 bidders, but what kind of difference does it make when you were only going to have one? Yeah. And that person there, and that second person,
they have all the power.
Exactly right. And so many times as well, you will see a buyer turn up on the day that has made a connection with it very, very recently. And a lot of that can be down to just, like we said, a passive buyer, good placement, but there's pure luck in that instance. Whereas what you're talking about is trying to really, I guess, hunt down those buyers and take luck out of the equation. Yeah,
absolutely. I think, the percentage return that you can get off that investment getting one buyer is going to be, 10 times the investment. I mean, it doesn't take much, even on a cheaper property, to get an extra 10,000 if you've got two people both wanting
It's the same as styling, right? When we met with Coco Republic, there's not a measurable amount, percentage or dollar-wise, that you can give a vendor when they say, well, or when they ask the same question, so what, should we style it? What's the return on investment going to be? Well, can't give you that. All I can say is that, given its track record, this is what it's done time and time again. And it's so different with every single property. But I think a lot of vendors, will have to come around to that. It's a trust factor, the same as putting a new kitchen in and, knowing that you've spent 50, if you just made 50, you got out of it okay. But in most times, that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you want to take the long-term view, just put a signboard up and just wait for the phone to ring. Yeah. But that's passive marketing. Yeah. If you want active marketing, you need to cast lines in the water. You need to try and get to more fish.
Yeah, if you want a big fish, you need a big net.
Yeah. Exactly.
But we're talking about attracting people. The one thing that I've always said to sellers is that, I guess if you look at some of the biggest brands in the world, like let's just take Nike for example, what is the reason why someone will pay $100 for a white t-shirt with a tick on it as opposed to a white t-shirt without the tick? And it's purely a brand. And they've created that brand over decades, and they've created that brand with incredible marketing. You don't have the luxury when you put your property on the market of decades to create a brand around your home. You've only got a short time, maybe 3 to 4 weeks. But I think it is important, of course, to create a brand, an atmosphere, what your home's all about, because that's what will get the emotion in the buyers. And I think that's something which you can't do anywhere near as effectively with things like a brochure or a signboard as you can with digital marketing if it's cleverly done.
I mean, I think right now, if you're going with an agent that does digital marketing, you'll have the advantage of being, one of the few properties that is digitally marketed in your area. At the moment, not many agents do it. So that's an advantage. Over time, when it becomes normalised, you'll also have a different advantage, that the remarketing audiences that have built up will be bigger and therefore more powerful. But either way, it's definitely a benefit to the vendor. And, I think that we've seen, as you pointed, campaigns coming down in cost. And the key driver there probably has been the decline of print advertising.
There's none in our area now.
There's none in your area now, exactly. So, if 2 years ago, your average campaign was $5,000, now it's $3,000. It's $3,000 now because $2,000 worth of opportunity to spend has gone away and nothing's filled its place. So if I was a vendor, if an agent didn't get digital marketing or didn't at least present it to me, I'd be concerned about that agent's understanding of how people discover property nowadays. Because then there's certainly not going to be doing your property the most justice, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people heading down that path with marketing, it's about wanting to make the commitment, but it takes a bit of trust. So I think for a lot of agents, it's about making sure they've got something that's been measurable and taking it back out to the client to say, well, these are the numbers and that's the benefit. If a homeowner who is heading to market wanted to have their agent use the product, is it available for them to speak with?
100%, campaigntrack.com. Product placement. Any agent. It's available to any agent and any brand. It's a really simple thing. The agents don't need to be digital experts. It's like they don't know how a signboard gets made, but they know that they order it and they approve the artwork and it ends up outside the property and looks schmick. It's the same thing. There's a lot of moving parts, and you don't want agents worrying about trying to do it themselves. If an agent's doing it themselves and they're spending time doing something that they aren't an expert on, and they haven't got all this amazing technology that we built, millions of dollars worth of technology that's doing all the heavy lifting with the targeting and the artwork creation, etc., they should spend that time on negotiating, prospecting, hitting the phone, doing the old-fashioned stuff, because that's their primary role.
Because it takes time. Like I have, when that sort of first became a big factor was like social media marketing and, like even when Facebook promotions were massive. And this was kind of before Ad Manager, where you would just hit boost and it would really have some good reach. But I remember just the creativity that it takes per property, per post to make it different than just this to just sold, was really difficult. And it got to the point where you're spending 45 minutes. Now, I've just had a look at the other day, the ad manager, and how confusing that all is to try and run. And, credit to Facebook, they've created a great business opportunity for all different businesses and to you guys as well, because it's something that I think it took me about an hour to navigate how to even create a post that would get some form of reach to where I wanted it, and it still didn't perform because by the time I hit run, it said there's an error with your post. So I would have been better off spending that time on the phone.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, Stefan, it's been really good talking with you. I think when we started the podcast, the main goal was to try and help sellers make better decisions and buyers as well. So hopefully some sellers out there will take it on board and maybe challenge their agents to, embrace it and move forward with the technology sooner than perhaps they are at the moment. So.
That's terrific, guys. I really appreciate it. I love your format. I follow your podcast. It's really good. You should listen to some of the other episodes, those of you tuning into this one. Appreciate it. Good job. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us.